Welcome to the Modern Husbands Podcast, where any combination, Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money in the home as a team. Today we welcome Dr. Kubra Aytac. Dr. Aytac is a member of the Children and Parents Lab at The Ohio State University. She holds 3 MS degrees in the fields of psychology and sociology and majored in sociology and philosophy with a minor in political science and public administration. Her master's thesis about maternal gatekeeping received the METU Best Thesis of the Year award. Her primary research interests are adult attachment, co-parenting, couple relationships, and well-being. Today, we are going to discuss high-quality parenting, maternal gatekeeping, and how couples can work past it. Enjoy the episode.
Kubra, Dr. Ross and I are thrilled that you are here today. Man, this is going to be such a great conversation about, ultimately it's about parenting and how husbands can team up with their partners to be great parents. But the research that you're uncovering is fascinating. So much to share. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. Let's just dive right in. So how do you define high quality parenting?
So it's like a balance of these 3 dimensions. I always like using these 3 dimensions when I'm explaining parenting. It's engagement, accessibility, and responsibility. So the balance would be active engagement, accessible presence, and responsible care. What does it mean is that because these dimensions both tap onto direct and indirect involvement, and in terms of highlighting the ways parents contribute to child's development and well-being. So we can think of them like engagement as direct interaction, and accessibility as being available to the child, and responsibility as being taking care of the overall well-being of the child.
So this is our 60-second challenge. So you're going to try to answer each of these 3 questions in 60 seconds or less. No pressure.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay, what is the meaning of life?
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. Okay. All right. Here are
High
the
quality parenting.
Did anyone find it?
60 seconds. All right. Here is the first question. What is one example activity of high quality parenting?
In terms of, I can give you 3 examples in terms of each dimension. Actually, for engagement, it will be directly playing playing a game with a child, but encouraging their efforts, not just playing in the game, or helping the child with the homework by actively explaining the concepts, actively explaining what's going on with the homework and everything, or discussing their feelings during a challenging situation. And in terms of accessibility and
I know I said 60 seconds, but with this engagement, that's so important. So you're not just talking about the engagement of the activity, but also the social and emotional learning aspect of it. So if they are, let's say, learning a new skill or learning something in school, they're going to naturally be frustrated, and helping them understand what those feelings mean and how to work through them. Right?
Yeah, that's why that's one of the most important aspects of involvement, and that's the one we're trying to promote more, because accessibility and responsibility are more can be intangible and can be easier to do. Accessibility is being in the same room, but child is working on something, but you're in the kitchen doing something else, but you're there, accessible. So it doesn't require active involvement. But with engagement, you need to be there, present. You need to be listening. You need to be engaging. So it requires more effort in terms of parenting.
Okay, so the first one is engagement. Okay, so now for the second example, you said that's accessibility. Try to paint a picture of what that looks like if you're a parent with a child.
Let's say you're working on some household task, you're cooking, and the child plays nearby, or the child's doing his or her homework on the kitchen table. And child knows that you're there, and she or he can ask you questions anytime. You're engaging in, occasional help, occasional conversation. You're still present, even if you're not actively getting engaged with the child. Or again, it can be like being present during after school hours, not being always busy for the child. Like, I have this meeting, I have this going on, I need to go to gym. Of course, mothers and fathers have their own plans, but accessibility requires to be able to offer children like assistance when they're going to need you, being available for conversation, guidance as they need, even if not doing it directly, but giving the children the feeling that they know that you're there and they can ask for it anytime.
And that's such a key point, because if let's say you're just playing on your phone, if they need you, you're going to just drop your phone. You're not going to say, hold on a second, right?
Exactly. They're just like making time for the child. That phone is like media uses one of the biggest things right now, but that's a great example. It's not like just give me a second, or like just I'm doing something, I'm scrolling. Just responding whenever child needs you, so they will feel safe next time when they need help.
And what is so you've got engagement, accessibility, and what's the third?
Third one is the responsibility. And that is I think, the most difficult one to measure or exemplify, because it's more intangible and indirect. So it can be being worried about the child's overall well-being or health. Let's say if you're worried that, oh, my child is leaving home today without enough clothes on it, he or she might get a little cold today. That means you're taking that responsibility. So it's about feeling concerned about the child's emotional well-being and kind of taking steps to address any issues that might arise beforehand. So it's intangible, it requires emotional commitment, it requires long-term planning. And so they're not always easy to observe or quantify. So it manifests indirectly through the child's well-being.
And I have 3 kids, and my oldest is, we had our first when we were young. He's 21. And I can tell you from a lot of experience, that one weighs the most on parents. By far and away, that's the hardest. The engagement, that's the fun stuff. The responsibility, it can be a little harder if you're like really into whatever you're doing and your kid's asking for something. But boy, that last one is really difficult.
Yeah, because it's like an overall commitment to the children's well-being.
And I want to add something real quick. And I know Dr. Ross had a series of questions, but a common go-to for parents who, they want the responsibility of kind of like being there for their kids, but let's say they're doing something at the same time, is to hand them an iPod or hand them an iPhone. And when my kids were young, I was lucky where the screens were just in the early stages. And I taught for a long time, and there was no real research out there. I just looked at it and thought, oh man, this feels wrong. And these are little addiction devices. So we were really strict on how early our kids could use those. We were one of the last parents to like give in and let them get any kinds of screens. And the research that's come out lately is essentially like, these screens are so bad for kids. And that if you're a parent looking for a way to like, be responsible, be there while they're playing, I know that a screen is tempting because they do dive into it and leave you alone. But I can tell you from the research, it's very bad. If you can find other ways to do it, please do it. So anyhow, I had to interject that. Dr. Ross, I don't want to take time away.
Well, no, actually, I'd like to follow up with that too, Brian. And so, Kubra, do you have any, I guess, recommendations for the parents that say, well, yeah, they're on the screen, but I'm being accessible right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we always suggest parents to not leave the child alone with the screen, kind of monitoring and watching what they're doing and getting engaged with what they're doing. Oh, you're playing that game, it looks cool. Who's this character? What are you doing? What kind of a game is this? So it's like showing them you're getting engaged, and also being responsible of what they're doing, what they're clicking on, and how much time they're spending, and kind of setting boundaries beforehand is the most important things with the screen use. Just telling them you have 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever the amount you decide with your co-parent or by yourself, is just agreeing with the child. So it's not opening it for negotiation, And being in the same room, it's important, even if you're not directly monitoring what is child doing, but they would know that you're also, again, accessible there. So that's important.
Good recommendations, good tips. And I know that a lot of these screens now too you can set parental controls, and you can even set time limits so that they can only be on it for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you do set, and then it locks them out of actually using the screen. Could you explain a little bit for us what maternal gatekeeping is?
Yeah. That's great. I love that concept. I published a couple of papers on that because I find it amazing in explaining some of the parental behaviors. Maternal gatekeeping is basically a term that we use to describe behaviors that one parent, it's called maternal because it's mostly observed with mothers. When one parent encourages,
but it can be observed with fathers as well.
Yes, so it started as maternal gatekeeping, but it evolved into the concept evolved into parental gatekeeping.
Parental gatekeeping. Okay.
Yeah, so right now there's a little bit like kind of research on how fathers can be gatekeepers too, but it started with maternal gatekeeping because we observe these behaviors or attitudes more with mothers, and of course there are reasons to that, but it's when one parent encourage or discourage the other parent's involvement in caregiving. It's not about who does what in home. It's about invisible barriers parents place around certain parenting roles that other parent cannot pass through that barrier. So imagine when a mother gatekeeps, it's like she's holding the keys to a locked door. Sometimes it's about control, sometimes it's about concern, and sometimes about keeping the child's well-being at the center. So it can be by mothers or fathers, then we call paternal gatekeeping, and overall it's parental gatekeeping.
Interesting. Yeah, I know the research on fathers is always lagging a little bit. I remember taking a class specifically on fatherhood back in 2013 or so some time ago, but there were only like 16 research papers published on fatherhood.
Yeah, there's still not much research. Yeah, it's like 50 years old.
Yeah, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds on mothers and mothering, if not thousands. But and so I know, the terms often have maternal gatekeeping, and that's just because it was mothers that have been studied. But thank you for pointing out that we are evolving these terms into parental gatekeeping, and that's it takes two parents, right? And both mothers and fathers in any relationship can be involved in it. So can you explain a little bit more about how maternal gatekeeping can get in the way of father's involvement?
So again, when we talk about maternal gatekeeping, we talk about two sub-dimensions, like gate opening or gate closing. So mothers, since they have the key, they can either open the door or close the door, right? So it's not necessarily just discouraging father's involvement. They can use it to encourage father's involvement. So mothers, when they engage in high levels of gate closing, they may limit father's involvement in all caregiving activities, which can affect the quality of and quantity of father-child interactions. We know this from well-established research. It can happen through controlling the decisions about children's development, taking over tasks, creating barriers that prevent the other parent from fully participating. But on the other hand, yeah, go ahead.
Just for clarification for our listeners, what kind of activities or tasks specifically are you referring to? Or just examples of those?
Yeah, gate closing can take in many forms. So, for example, when we invite parents into our lab for observational tasks or for research that we need to observe their co-parenting interactions with their 3 months old, 6 months old, 9 months of infants, we give them the task of changing the baby's clothes together while we are recording them on camera. And later we code their behaviors in terms of maternal gate opening and maternal gate closing. And when they're coding that behavior, as it can be even a single eye roll that mother is doing when father isn't getting engaged. It can be really physically blocking the father, like with their hands, arms, taking care of everything and not giving space for them to getting engaged. It can be criticizing them, like it's not the way, that's not the right arm. Or it can be just watching them but redoing the same task after father completed it. So it's like correcting what they have done. Or it can be directly expressing their uncomfort, expressing their displeasure, that like, I don't like the way you get the baby dressed, I don't like the way you hold the baby. So it can be in kind of like physical ways, it can be with words, it can take many forms.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, yeah, through different body language, verbal criticisms, just like the actual like actions of blocking someone out, like, and yeah, okay, so lots of different ways.
Yeah, and you can apply it to the other different activities. Let's say scheduling the bedtimes or taking the child outside. Again, mother can be criticizing the way the father scheduled the event, can criticize the way father get the kid dressed. So you can apply these kind of criticism to every setting. And there's and it's same for gate opening. They can encourage father's involvement in every possible way too, with just a simple nodding, smiling, confirming that they're doing good. So it can again take many forms.
As a Modern Husbands podcast listener, you recognize the importance of evidence-based advice from leading national experts for your marriage. That's why we know you will love our marriage toolkit. Nearly 50 national experts came together to provide bite-sized advice to manage the toughest topics couples face in managing money in the home as a team. Go to modernhusbands.com for your free preview of our marriage toolkit to start, strengthen, or rebuild your marriage. Once again, that's modernhusbands.com to sign up for your free preview of our marriage toolkit. Now back to the show.
Are the parents that are gatekeeping, whether it is the mother or the father, are they aware they're doing this?
That's a great question, because they might be or might not be. That's why we say gatekeeping is attitudes and behaviors that is encouraging or discouraging father involvement. So some of our attitudes are rising from the deeply rooted beliefs and our kind of faith about how the world works, how division of labor should work. So mothers might be getting engaged in gatekeeping without even knowing, in unconscious ways. Yeah, so it can be in both ways.
So I guess then the next question would be logically, like, what's the origin of this maternal gatekeeping or the paternal gatekeeping? Like, how do we have these either conscious or unconscious? Like, how do we develop these behaviors, thoughts, attitudes?
So the first time this term appeared was like late 80s, early 90s, and most of the research about gatekeeping was rooted in historical gender roles, where women were traditionally seen as the primary caregivers, right, and men as providers. And the researchers explained these behaviors as that the cultural expectations shapes how parenting duties were divided. And it's about the cultural expectations about what it means to be a good mother can pressure women to take on more responsibilities and be more controlling of parenting roles. And this pressure can manifest as maternal gatekeeping, where mothers limit the influence of fathers so they can take on more responsibilities, or even other caregivers, like extended family members, or just rejecting to get help from anyone. But the new research tells us that maternal gatekeeping may be more strongly associated with other aspects than traditional gender roles. So my recent research, I was curious, like, why really would a mother do that, right? It doesn't make any sense to take on more responsibility and take on more burden when you have a parent who would be in some cases willing to share the responsibility. So, and then the established research is that it's because the way we perceive gender roles, and that the traditionally women are caregiver, men are provider. But then my meta-analysis showed that actually that might not be the case. There might be other reasons behind, other motivations behind these maternal behaviors. So
now, before you share this, because this is such an important point, and it's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on, can first you share what a meta-analysis is to like the lay listener, because this is essential, and then follow up with the other origins of maternal gatekeeping, which if you're listening and you have kids and you've experienced this in some way, you probably have felt right now your blood starting to boil, because it is an extremely frustrating thing to go through if you are on the other end of maternal gatekeeping. So anyhow, what's a meta-analysis? And then what are the other origins that you found?
Yeah, meta-analysis is basically collecting all the research that is conducted in the field about the topic you're interested in. Let's say I am looking at the relationship between maternal gatekeeping and traditional gender roles, and I am combining all the results of all research done in this area before. And it requires certain kind of like statistical procedures to combine these results. And overall, I end up having a single result, whether there's a significant relationship between gatekeeping and traditional gender roles. And if it says no, it means that the all other research that published that it shows a relationship between these two might have missing something, or might have different contexts. Let's say this relationship might be valid for certain samples in some societies where traditional gender roles are stronger, but it might not be explaining mother's behavior in other societies where traditional gender roles are not that strong. So meta-analysis is basically just combining all the results of all research in the area that is done in that about that topic.
Okay, and that's important because this isn't just one study. This is how many studies were dumped into your meta-analysis?
It requires tons of cleaning and screening. So we started with lots of studies, but then you screen all these studies because you're looking at two specific things. So as far as I remember, we ended up having something 20 reports that is reporting significant relationship between maternal gatekeeping and traditional gender role, mostly. And it means like 8,000 participants, parents, when you combine all the numbers in all these research.
And that is significant, and and it's so important to stress that, because we as fathers and look, there's probably mothers that are listening to this as well. We need to understand, where does maternal gatekeeping come from? Because it's not healthy when you're closing doors, as you would say. So what are the other origins other than just traditional gender norms?
So to be honest, the formal development and recognition of maternal gatekeeping as a concept was significantly influenced by legal cases, particularly in the context of divorce and custody disputes. So during custody evaluations, legal professionals and psychologists that observed that mothers often had significant influence over the amount of time fathers could spend with their children. Even if they get the equal custody, fathers are gatekeeping and not getting father involved with their children. So in legal cases, some of these behaviors were explained as it is for the sake of child's well-being. If father's involvement is not really benefiting the child, mother try to protect the child from the father. And in other cases, so there some research showing that maternal gatekeeping can be mostly originated from the belief in your partner's competence.
Okay.
So some mothers,
what that means is, if you think your partner's stupid, you're not going to relinquish very
Or
much power
incompetent.
to your partner. I'm just trying to break it out for the lay listener. If you think your partner's an idiot, then, or ex-partner, right? Like that's what we're talking about, then you're not going to relinquish a lot of control for your partner to be able to have a heavy hand in parenting, right? That's an unkind way to say it, but I just want to make sure that the lay listener out there understands.
Yeah, if a mother thinks that the father is incapable of taking care of childcare tasks, he's not just good at it according to their standards. In some cases, mothers have very high standards, and the fathers cannot keep up with their standards.
That's a
They
good
just
point.
don't want others to do it.
That's a good point. There's going to be a difference in what you see as an acceptable standard of care. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and that's, you've got to get on the same page there, right? You've got to. That's where you have to have those weekly conversations about what does an acceptable standard look like in parenting. Like, for example, if it's your turn to be available for your child because mom's at work, whatever. The acceptable standard of care in our household was, don't let them just play on an iPod or iPad or whatever, an iDevice that's addictive. No screens. That's an acceptable. Like saying that is essential, because if my wife were to leave, and let's say I have young children, and I just give my kids devices, my wife would be rightfully upset, because that could be counterproductive, right? So I'm really glad you brought up the point of having different standards of care that are acceptable to each parent, because you've got to get on the same page.
Yeah, if in most cases, mothers might perceive father's involvement or father as being more loose than them in terms of like setting rules or boundaries.
Yeah.
So they just don't want them to handle the childcare tasks.
Yeah, because you are, in the short run, you're avoiding an argument that way, right? By just not addressing it. It's just, in the short run, it's just easier to say, oh, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, that might be the case in some. If let's say you decided on the child's diet, but you think that your partner is gonna just give him or her some snacks that he or she is not supposed to have, or sure he had enough already. Instead of just talking with your partner like about this and going through this discussion, you just handle the situation. You just manage or the diet schedule or what to buy, and then it even like has a spillover effect on other domestic tasks. So you go to grocery shopping, so you handle what to buy.
Yeah, that's right. Because if you, let's say the mother is the one who owns the cognitive labor, meaning the thinking about when to go get diapers, baby powder, blah, blah, blah. It's easier for her to go get it herself because she knows exactly what needs to be purchased. And if she sends her husband, then her husband might purchase the wrong thing, which could be really bad if the baby is allergic to the baby powder, right? So that's why it's so important to like make sure that the distribution of the labor around child care is equitable, meaning if, like, for example, if I am responsible as a father for preparing every meal for the child, meaning the school lunches or breakfasts or whatever, I should probably own everything with that, including the grocery. Now, maybe I don't go to the grocery, but I'm the one that's going to tell my spouse this is exactly what they need, but it's better that I go and get that stuff. What are some other things that when you're thinking about standards of care, differences in standards of care that could lead to problems that have originated from maternal gatekeeping? Is there anything else that sticks out where you're like, oh, this is a big problem, couples need to know about this, here's how you solve it?
I think the first thing couples need to know is that they need to be aware of whether they're gatekeepers first. So when in one of my research, I gave the task to mothers to just observe father and their child interacting for 10 minutes without intervening. And I wanted them to report their observations and how they felt. And the common theme was they came to me and they said, oh, I was so difficult to not to intervene. I just noticed that I always intervene when my partner and the child is interacting or doing something together. My partner is like feeding the baby or changing the diaper. I always instruct them. I always intervene with them. So that was very difficult. I just become aware that I am actually gatekeeping, but I didn't know that. I wasn't doing it on purpose. I want my partner to be involved. I don't know why I'm doing it. So first thing is really working on themselves, like asking, am I a gatekeeper? Am I doing it? Am I a gate closer actually? Or do I encourage my partner enough? Then, yeah.
Do you suggest then, like, parents, if you think that you might be a gatekeeper, should you just like test yourself? Should we just should you just stay out of an interaction and see how long you can make it? Or if there's feelings that are coming up that you want to jump in or not, and that might be a sign?
That's difficult to detect, like really, because as I say, it can be
Or do they
unconscious
have
or
to go to your
conscious.
lab and get this tested?
Oh, I think they need like honest conversation with their partner and just like self-reflection, because
Okay.
in some cases they might not aware that they even reject that they're gatekeeping. No, I don't discourage my partner. He just don't want to do it, right? So we really don't know what we need to have an honest conversation with mothers about whether they're really getting engaged these behaviors. So there are surveys that we administer to measure gatekeeping behavior. And as I said, there are also observational measures that we observe couples interacting with the child together, and we code their behaviors. So these are the two ways now we can know whether they're getting actively engaged in gatekeeping or not. But with the survey, like with asking questions, there's always risk of them underreporting, like, oh, I don't do that. I don't block my partner. I never discourage him. So, or like over-reporting their encouragement. I always encourage my partner. I always tell him to do it. I always, so also I would say that observational measures are really good point to detect gatekeeping behavior.
Why do mothers want to exclude a parent from responsibilities?
Yeah, so that is one of the research questions I am focused on, trying to understand the motivations behind mothers, and they can be a couple of reasons. As I said, the first one is the traditional gender roles. That is thought to be the main reason, and it can still be in, as I say, certain populations, that cultural and social norms dictate that mothers should take primary caregiving role. And the other one is perceived competence, that mothers may believe that they're more competent in their parenting tasks. They're getting engaged in, like, they watch podcasts, they read books about childcare. So they think that their partner is not really engaged, so he doesn't know as much. And if a mother lacks confidence in the father's parenting abilities or decision-making skills, it doesn't have to be just for childcare tasks, she might restrict his involvement to avoid potential issues or mistakes. Or it can, there's a potential reason that we hasn't looked at yet. It can be pre-existing conflicts or resentment in the relationship between the parents can cause the gatekeeping behavior. So it's like the spillover effect. They have a conflict in another area, but they are applying this, like they're carrying this conflict to the childcare area by holding the power of decision making about children. So it's kind of claiming that domestic power within that domestic sphere about the decisions about the children, decisions about the domestic tasks. So that can be one of the reasons. But also, like, we all know that there's a rise in this intensive mothering. So it's like a social expectations and pressure to conform traditional roles, that mothers should be doing a perfect job in terms of handling childcare tasks, but also have a great career, have a good social life, have good looks. And we have the rise of Instagram moms that we see a lot, that you see this perfect lifestyle. They have children, but they care about their self health, they care about their career, so they do everything at once. And the mother's scrolling down at home thinking, why I cannot be one of these mothers. I am not that perfect, so I should take on more responsibilities. I should do more to be the perfect mom. But I also, we know that perfection is a lie, so it doesn't exist.
We know
right?
the social media, all the, the Instagram, like perfect whatever is a lie.
Yeah. It's and people get that flooded, those images flooded into their heads of basically people sharing the best moments of their best days, and everyone else believing, oh yeah, they've got it figured out. She has like an exceptional career, and she's the perfect mother, and she's the, come on, give me a break. If you've been married for over 20 years, that's all nonsense. All of us have to work through challenges. Okay, we'd like to leave for our listeners an opportunity for the guests to share like one specific simple piece of advice that they can take action with in their lives based on what we've talked about today. What would that be?
Ultimately, parenting is not about achieving perfection, but about creating a loving, balanced environment where every family member can contribute and grow. So I would say unlock parenting, just share the keys and open the doors to each other.
Wonderfully said. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
A special thanks to our guest and, of course, to all of our listeners. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you download your podcast, give us a rating, and share the Modern Husbands podcast with others. Doing so goes a long way in growing our reach. And join your fellow Modern Husbands and have links to our podcasts, articles, and other resources to manage money in the home as a team sent to your inbox every 2 weeks by subscribing to our newsletter at modernhusbands.com. Until next time, be well.